Hello everyone, I am Shane1288 here with another perfectly unscientific gaming review, and today we're back again in the 32nd Century Crossfield Refit. And I already did a video of a pure science build on this when the ship was released, and we're going to push the limits even further today, and you're probably wondering why that is. And well, the first reason is that we're on an engineer character. And engineers typically have a reputation of not being able to do as much damage as a tactical character, and rightly so, but we can make it work. The engineer skills for damage are Nadion Inversion, which lowers the weapon power cost, EPS power transfer that gives us a boost to all power levels. It also increases our max power levels by 25 or 30 seconds. And it increases our power transfer rate by 250%, which is a very complicated mechanic behind the scenes. But in a nutshell, what this does is it just makes it so your power levels refill faster as you recover power. Then we have intrusive energy redirection, which drains enemies' weapons and auxiliary power and buffs our weapons and auxiliary power. But it also has the side effect of providing between a 10 and 50% bonus weapon damage boost based on the number of targets. So that'll either be 10, 20, 30, 40, or a 50% Cat 2 damage boost, which rivals that of the DPRM console that people spend hundreds of millions of energy credits on. Now, the second reason we're pushing this to the limit is because this is a directed energy weapons science hybrid build, or DewSci, as some people call it. And these builds have always been difficult to pull off in Star Trek Online because there needed to be sacrifices made on either side of the spectrum, either the energy weapon side or the science side. But we're now at a point where the power creep has progressed so far that these builds are actually viable. They're not going to top the DPS charts, but they get the job done. DewSci builds are something I've always had my eye on, and for years, and it's been a struggle to try and figure out a way to pull these together, but recent ships and recent add-ons to the game have made it a little bit easier to do. So with that being said, let's get into the build review for this, and as a reminder, this is the Crossfield Refit. It's a science spearhead, so it has 7 weapons in total, 4 up front, 3 in the back, 3 engineering consoles, 5 science consoles, 3 tactical consoles, and 1 universal console, or 2 if you upgrade it to Tier 6X. For our weapons, we're running the gravimetric photon torpedo launcher from the Dyson Reputation system. I chose this because, in addition to being a torpedo, it also generates gravimetric rifts, which counts towards the hybrid exotic particle generator and energy weapons build that we're doing. Then we got 3 cannons up front here. We got the Terran Task Force from the Terran Reputation at Tier 6. Very powerful cannon, probably the most powerful in the game. Then we have the Prolonged Engagement Phaser Dual Cannons. The more these are active in combat, the faster they fire. You can get these in the Phoenix Reward Shop. And then the Phaser Quad Cannons. These come from the Tier 4 Defiant, otherwise known as the Sao Paulo Escort. You can buy these for dilithium. And then in the back, we have the Advanced Inhibiting Phaser Turret from the Gamma Reputation, the Trilithium Enhanced Phaser Turret from Beyond the Nexus, and there's a chance for when this one procs, it'll make all of our energy weapons fire faster, and then just a vanilla Phaser Turret. Now, looking at the Deflector, Engine, Warp Core, and Shield, this set makes up the complete revolutionary set, but the individual pieces are worthy to look at as well. For the deflector array, this has been re-rolled to have as much control and EPG as it can. Combined with built-in bonuses, this deflector also gives us a control and EPG boost when we activate energy weapon firing modes. The engine gives us a boost as well, and it boosts critical hit chance when we activate a controlled bridge officer ability. The Warp Core itself buffs critical hit severity and provides a boost to control expertise for our benefit, and the shield is perhaps the most boring part. That just gives us a boost to directed energy weapon damage based on our current aux power. But the reason we're using this is the 4-piece set. starting off with the 2-piece, gives us a little bit of turn rate, damage resistance versus foes in our forward arc, and 53.7 exotic damage critical severity, which is based on our Starship weapon amplification skill. Then the 3-piece is the weaponized mycelium lance. It says 84, almost 85k here, but it hits for much, much higher. It also leaves behind a rift that does some damage in its place when it disappears, or when the weapon is done firing, rather. Then the 4-piece gives us critical chance, a little bit of hull capacity, and gives more damage for the lance itself. Also increases the duration for which the rift is around. The secondary deflector, because this is a science ship, has as much control and EPG as we can get. In this, when we activate our sensor analysis, it buffs the damage that a certain target receives, and this is activated on the ship by our charged particle burst and tachyon beam. Now, for devices, we're running a exotic particle flood. This buffs our exotic damage for 20 seconds. It can be crafted from the science R&D school. The deuterium surplus is basically an evasive in a can. This comes from the Alhena system patrol, but after you do that, you can craft it in your engineering R&D school. And then a large engine battery, because this ship is slow, believe it or not, because you'll note that we're running primary weapon and secondary aux power. Normally, we'd be running primary weapon or secondary engine, or primary aux and secondary engine as well if this was a dedicated science ship. And as a result, this ship is a little bit slow, even when we're running evasive. So that's what the engine battery is for, to help us move around. And then this is the subspace field modulator. Comes from the Spectre's mission, just gives us a plus 34 all damage resistance rating for 15 seconds. In our universal consoles, we're running a vulnerability locator for phaser damage and critical chance. The Lorca's custom fire controls from the Discovery reputation, which buffs our critical chance, weapon power, and shield penetration. Normally, we'd be running the 2-piece with the dark matter quantum torpedo, but I wanted to go with the gravimetric for this build just to keep it in the exotic energy hybrid field, as the gravimetric photon generates those nice gravimetric rifts. For our tactical consoles, we got the Fakiri Torment engine, and this is an interesting console itself, because when we look at this one, this comes from one of the more recent mission rewards, Leap of Faith, and it increases non-hazard damage over time. It also buffs our fire, radiation, plasma, and physical damage, which is our secondary deflector, our Badlands Cyclone, and a number of our click abilities that we have here from our consoles. And it also has the ability to deal a non-hazard, deal a fire damage over time effect when dealing non-hazard damage over time. And that's when we activate our secondary deflector. You'll see this show up in the Parse. Then we got 2 more phaser locators here. In our engineering consoles, we're running the Plasma Storm module from the Maquis Raider, which is a Lobi ship. The bioneural infusion circuits for its excess hull capacity, control expertise, and critical severity. The Delphic Tear generator from the Infinity Lockbox for bonus exotic damage and critical severity itself. Then a crafted exotic particle field exciter that cost a good amount of energy credits for 78.8 extra EPG skill. The Neutronic Eddy generator from the Rysian Weather Control ship, which was last year's summer event reward, generates big purple clouds that deal a lot of radiation damage, and once again buffed by the Fakiri Torment engine. Then cascading gravimetric disruptions from the Earhart Strikewing Escort, which is a C-Store ship. You'll want to use this one when the targets are grouped close together. Deals a lot of kinetic damage, and it also pulls them together as well. Then the Dynamic Power Redistributor module, which comes from the Atlas Dreadnought. Yes, this is a meta console. It's here on this ship, and in reality, this is a nice console. But if you wanted a cheaper alternative, you could go with something like the M6 tactical computer from the Tier 3 Temporal Escort that can actually now be purchased with dilithium. So it's a nice alternative to that. Then we have the Tholian Web Spinner Array, which is from the most recent campaign event reward. This encases your target and a few targets around that target with Tholian webs, deals a nice amount of damage. It also buffs our physical damage, our control expertise, and Tetrion damage if we were using that. And it also has the neat side effect that any foe that is held gains a 50% bonus damage buff against it. Now moving on to the bridge officer powers, we got Gravity Well 3, Delayed Overload Cascade 3. Be careful when you use this one if you're in a run that doesn't have a lot of control, or you're just using it on something that maybe doesn't have gravel, because you'll knock things around quite a bit. Mixed Armament Synergy buffs our weapon damage to have 30% bonus all damage whenever we fire weapon of the opposing type. So when we fire a torpedo, we're buffing our cannons and vice versa. We could probably pick up a beam array to just aid in making this a bit easier. Maybe swap this turret out for a beam array. That might be something worth doing. Tachyon Beam, as I mentioned, to proc our secondary deflector. Charged Particle Burst, once again, another secondary deflector proc. And you're probably wondering why this is here, jam targeting sensors. And that's because we are running a trait called, where's the icon? Unconventional Systems, that whenever we use a control bridge officer power, so in the case of Gravity Well and jam targeting sensors, we knock 7% recharge time off of all our universal consoles. Improved Photonic Officer, which handles most of our cooldowns, and it also buffs our exotic damage with the improved Photonic Officer trait. Very Cold in Space 2, which is a very nice cold hazard in space. It deals a lot of damage even at this second rank. You can get it from the Winter Event Store. And Subspace Vortex, one another anomaly. So our three anomalies on this build are Gravity Well, Very Cold in Space, and Subspace Vortex. And now's a good time to move into the Starship traits. We got Withering Barrage from the Defiant, any number of Defiants out there, Legendary, Tier 6 Defiant, or even some of the Birds of Prey, including the free Bird of Prey that you get for the Klingon Recruit. Spore-infused anomalies from the Somerville Intel Science Vessel makes a burst of electrical damage come out from our anomalies whenever we activate a science power on this ship. So when we activate any science power, our Subspace Vortex, Very Cold in Space, and Gravity Well will send out a burst of energy that damages targets around it. Already talked about Improved Photonic Officer, increases the time it's up for 10 seconds, and we're also using it for the bonus exotic damage. Improved Gravity Well from the Science Andorian. This one might get changed out to something else. I don't think I'm running enough anomalies on this to make by the book from the Tier 6 Grissom work, so this is something I'm going to be questioning actively going forward. Then Emergency Weapon Cycle from the Tier 6 Arbiter or Mogai or Moog. Whenever we activate emergency power to weapons, negative 50% weapon power cost for 30 seconds. And then Universal Designs, the trait from the ship itself. When we activate a Universal Console, we get a stacking crit chance and crit severity boost. I realize I didn't mention our emergency power to weapons here, but this is obvious the only engineering ability we're running. Then Scatter Volley 2, Torpedo Spread 2, and Tactical Team 1. For our space traits, we got Cannon Training. This could be upgraded to Superior. I just haven't got around to the K-13 yet to do that. Unconventional Systems, I already mentioned. Fleet Coordinator, anytime we're flying in a team, we get a damage buff. Fragment of AI Tech, based on our control stat, we gain a stacking energy weapon buff, and we also get plus 50 control expertise from it, so that's actually a nice trade. And you'll see here that our control expertise is sitting at 335, so we're getting the maximum out of that, while our EPG is at 300. Miraculous Repairs to reduce the recharge time of our... Grace Under Fire to reduce the recharge time of our Miraculous Repairs ability. This could potentially also be swapped out to something if you're always running with a tank, but I keep it around because that's not always the case for me. Innocuous reduces threat generation and improves critical severity. Intel Agent Attaché, whenever we get a critical hit with any of our weapons, we have a bit of time reduced off of our captain ability, so our Nadion inversion, EPS power transfer, and intrusive energy redirection. Then Particle Manipulator, which is the linchpin of all things science in this game, in space at least. Based off of the EPG skill, we get a critical hit chance buff and critical severity buff. You unlock this from the Science R&D School. And then Context is for Kings, which is either a damage resistance rating buff or a damage buff, depending on whether or not you are being hit. Following from that, let's just have a quick look at the skill tree here. Give it a pause if you want to copy it. Specializations. Temporal primary, of course, because we're doing science. Plus 50 EPG is one big reason that we're doing it. Another reason is entropic rider. Whenever we fire energy weapons or projectile damage, we have a chance of activating a physical damage dot. We also have entropic amplification, plus 20 all damage boost for space damage over time effects. And temporal cross-wiring. Where are you? Right there. Activating an exotic damage ability grants a 4% firing cycle haste for 10 seconds. And we also have continuity, which serves as kind of a nice oops protection moment. If we ever get hit and we lose too much HP, we'll get a heal, both shield heal, and some of our bridge officer powers will recharge as well. Secondary is strategist, and the main reason we're doing this includes logistical support, which, when we're not threatening, gives us a critical chance buff for 10 seconds when healed. Also, for show of force, when we're not threatening, firing a weapon gives plus 4% crit severity for 10 seconds, 5 stacks maximum, so that's an extra 20%, and you can gain 1 stack every 5 seconds. And then diversionary tactics, it placates foes around us. And with maneuver warfare too, it gives us potentially a 3% bonus all damage buff for 5 targets, so that's potentially a 15% Cat 2 bonus all damage buff, which is quite a lot. Now, for duty officers on this one, I focused highly on the budget end with this. We got 3 green energy weapons officers. When we're firing our energy weapons, you can get crit severity buffs. These buffs stack up to 3 times. There are other duty officers you could purchase, but I'm not in the mood currently to spend upwards of millions of EC on a specific duty officer. We have a deflector officer that when we activate exotic damage abilities, we have a chance to gain 40 ox power, which you'll note is actually a good thing because we're currently only sitting at 93. So this is an officer that I think synergizes very nicely with these hybrid DPS exotic builds. Then we have our gravimetric scientist that creates aftershock gravity wells, and our Xindi biochemist that provides us with a chance to reduce threat after activating exotic damage abilities. If anything, I'd drop one of these and pick up another deflector officer, maybe. But that's the build. Let's have a look at the run and the parse now.
Scanning the nanite trench. Gone. Additional data available.
Actual technological compiler.
trench. Destroy it.
All right, so here's the parse from that run. You can see we did 541k DPS, 82 of which, 82k came from pets, which is broken down between 45k for the neutronic eddies, 22k for the crowning turbulence, and 9.9k for the Badlands Cyclone, with another 4 from the rift that are mycelial lance left behind. Deteriorating secondary deflector, 47k. Tholian console, 43k, 44k. Then there's some energy weapons coming in here right there at number 1 and number 2. Gravity Well, 28k. Gravimetric Rifts, 26.7k. Spore-infused anomalies, another 26. Delayed Overload Cascade, 23. Entropic Rider, 18.3. Cascading Gravimetric Disruptions, 13k. Vortex, 12.6. Our Mycelial Lance did 1 hit for 1.3 million, which corresponded to 10.7k DPS. More Spore-infused anomalies. Vicuri Torment Engine, 7.4. And you see, that's why we use that console in addition to all the other buffs it provides. It's really good for science. Plasma Storm. And then it just really breaks itself down from there. All right, so that was the run, parse, and build review of this ship and the Crossfield refit, bringing together energy weapons and exotics, something that was hard to do for a long time in Star Trek Online, but as you can see here, 100% viable. And, this build did do over 500k DPS, but you don't need to do that. You can do 100k, you can do 25k, heck, you could even do 10k. As long as you take ideas from this, that's what counts at the end of the day. So if you have any questions, please do feel free to leave them in the comments. And if you found this video at all useful, like and subscribe. See you next time, everybody.